Welcome back. This is the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation special presentation, and with me now we have founding member Troy Bancroft with Agriculture Liquid Fertilizer and Warren Graff with PNC Bank. Warren and Troy, thanks for joining me today.
Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so Troy, let's start out with you with the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation. You've been involved with this really from day one and probably even way before then. So tell us just a little bit about the inspiration for the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation.
Well, responsible nutrient management has always been a part of our company. It's been a core value. And one of the things that we did about 7 years ago is make it a talking point to be advocates for agriculture. There's so many times in my past we've seen people do things that we were against the grain of really what was agronomically responsible. So in our fertilizer company, we decided that this was a talking point that we need to do more outside of our business and to the general public and non-farm folks as well.
All right, so let's get a little bit more specific in that. How is your company helping farmers responsibly manage their nutrients? What do you do that's different from others?
Well, one of the things we do have is we have a 780-acre research facility that really drills down on the best management practices to utilize fertilizer products and specifically AgroLiquid products. And in doing so, we find the best management practices that are available today with the different tools that are out there, finding the best way to apply the nutrients that are available to the plant in the seed zone, getting a better response, and always hitting the target that we want and not over applying. Always using soil testing methods and methodology, because to non-farm folks, a soil test is just like a blood test. It just shows your highs and lows, and that's what a soil test does too, is it just shows the highs and the lows. We fertilize that crop to be grown and not over apply, and thus being less impacting on the environment.
Okay, so I want to come back to this research facility you talk about. 780 acres, if you're a non-farmer, might not sound like much, but that's a tremendous amount of acres for research. Do you know how many trials you're doing roughly in a given year?
There's roughly over 3,000 different tests they're doing, replicated over 5 times, that and statistically analyzed and randomly done. So we have really true, pure research that we can publish and with confidence make recommendations, so we have research-proven, farmer-trusted methodologies for what we do.
Yep. All right, Warren, let's get to you. So I can understand how a fertilizer company is involved in some of these equipment companies, but what's a bank doing involved with responsible nutrient management?
That's a very good question, Darren. And I guess my response to that is we know that for farmers to survive and prosper on the farm, not only do they need to practice responsible nutrient management, but they need to be responsible in managing their finances. And when we look at the economics of farming, it's very important for those farmers to produce crops at an economically efficient level. We don't want them producing an excessive amount of grain, but we also want them not to be under applying fertilizer so they're not reaching those economic benefits. So for us, what we see is farmers who practice good agronomics in the application of chemicals and fertilizer are also going to be interested in economically what's in their best interest. And we try to work with those kinds of farmers to help them understand the economics and the benefits that that provides to them in addition to the agronomic benefits.
All right, so just in the last 5 years, we've had some of the highest highs, and we're also experiencing some low times. So tell us just a little bit about some of the discussions that you and your bank have with farmers as you're going through those high and low times and, you know, managing nutrients and their other resources on the farm.
Very good question. In times of prosperity, farmers tend to do things like buy more land, upgrade their machinery and equipment, do that in a way to take advantage of some of the advances agronomically or technologically wise for their farming operations. But we also advise them that agriculture is very cyclical. So in those times when they're generating a significant amount of income, it's important for them to build up some reserves, to pay down debt, to be ready for that ultimate time when the prices decline, as they're beginning to do now. So we coach and counsel a lot of our customers to say, here's some financial ratios that we see are important. Just like Troy has ratios that they use from their field testing, we have economic ratios that we take a look at to help advise and counsel our farmers on where they need to be at any given point in time in the income cycle for farmers.
So one of the purposes of the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation is to get the message out about the good things that we are doing in agriculture. And obviously, as a bank, you have a lot more than just ag customers. So can you tell us a little bit about the kind of conversations you have with non-farmers and what questions are they asking you about agriculture?
Well, we get involved a lot with a lot of consumer groups and people who are very interested in environmental stewardship.
Yep.
I have had many occasions to speak to them on what agriculture is all about. And what we try to emphasize to them, because many of them are far enough removed from farming operations generationally or geographically, that they really don't understand what's going on the farm. So we really try to emphasize the fact that it's really in the farmer's economic best interest to also be good environmental stewards of the land and the resources that they have to work with. And we go through some examples with them of explaining from an income-wise why it makes a lot of sense to be economically sound and agronomically sound in the farmer's practices. So it's helping bridge that gap between non-farmers and farmers and getting those non-farmers to understand why it's in that farmer's best interest to be good environmental stewards.
Yep. So Troy, I want to talk about that just a little bit more about how farmers are being responsible. But I think about even our own farming operation. I live right on the farm and we farm ground right around my house. The last thing as a farmer I want to do is pollute the land and the environment. It just seems like common sense to me that everybody would understand that. Why don't people get it? Why do people think occasionally that we are doing a bad job in agriculture and on the farm?
Well, we're 2 generations from people being on the farm that really understand it, and more of the farms are getting larger, and they do have urban people on the perimeter of their farms. These folks don't understand what they do, but farmers are great ecologists and environmentalists. They're only protecting the land for their grandchildren because most farms are passed down. And so with that being said, the farmer today economically has to do the things that are right for him. He's not going to over-apply. He's doing the best job he can to get the greatest return he can. And again, if he passes that down to his grandchildren, we want to leave it in better condition than when we found it. I learned a long time ago, growing up as a young lad, working on different farms, the things that we were doing wrong on the farms, but it was because of ignorance. Now we know the differences, and we're practicing those more responsibly and more environmentally sound.
Sure. Okay, let's get a little more specific into that. So what things have changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years that you can say, oh, we're much better today being much more environmentally sound?
Well, we do a lot of buffer strips to waterways. We create waterways in our land to make water move down in hilly regions without eroding the soil. With these buffer strips, we don't spray close to these waterways. You know, if we think about what's going on in Lake Erie right now with the algae blooms, and thinking about maybe we don't want that to happen in the future in any watershed or any body of water. So farmers are being more conscious about what they apply and how they apply it. So the 4 R's instituted by the Fertilizer Institute, the right product, the right place, the right time, and the right amount, really applies to every agriculturalist that we deal with in trying to do the best job they can.
Well, it's frustrating for me too when I hear things about Lake Erie, for example, and literally the week that story came out, I was in Ohio and Michigan right there at Lake Erie talking to farmers who just said, if you go along the shores, there are a lot of pollutants in this particular lake, in Lake Erie, and most of them are non-farm things. So why does the farmer always get the blame, even though the farmer may not be the main cause of the problem?
Well, that's a good question, and it's easy to point fingers at an environmental issue, and fortunately our Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, took a stand on that and is putting some money in there to rectify that and to provide solutions.
Okay, so that I think this all kind of comes back to why is the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation here, and what message do you have to our farmers and non-farmers who are watching today just about this organization, why this is important, and what they can do to better explain the message of agriculture?
Well, all of our partners are responsible for making their talking points in their different areas of expertise. And one of the things that we try to send a message to is that we have to feed in the year 2050, 9 billion people. How are we going to do that? Sustainably, economically, and the United States holds all the keys, and the keys are infrastructure. And how do we get a large mass bulk product to different areas of the world? And if you've ever traveled in third world countries, you certainly realize that they do not have that key. The U.S. has inland waterways through the Mississippi. It has the coastal, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Gulf. It has a railway system that's great, a highway system. So since 1983, we've more than doubled our production of average bushels of corn. We expect that to double again. And with that, it's going to take a mass movement of the ability to move mass movement of product around the United States, and we have that in place. So I think we as suppliers or we as agriculturalists need to send the message that we have this responsibility in the future. And we have to be responsible with everything we do, because the land is something that you cannot replace. It's a great ecosystem that we have to protect, and the farmers need to drill down on how they put their fertilization in zones as opposed to broadcasting, and getting the best use of their fertilizer nutrients when they apply them.
Yep, well said. Warren, how about for you? Any last words you want to leave with our audience today? Any things that your company is doing? Any message that you want to say to farmers and non-farmers about agriculture in general?
Well, I think it's important for all of us to understand that we all live on the same planet, and that it's important for all of us to work together when it comes to being environmentally responsible with the natural resources that we enjoy. And whether you're a homeowner who's putting fertilizer on your yard, if it's a business who is processing chemicals or other types of products that are going to impact our environment, or you're a farmer growing food, fiber, biofuels for all of us to utilize, it's important that we all work together and equally take steps to be responsible with nutrient management for our property that we own. Farmers certainly use a lot of land, so it is economically and agronomically very important for them to be responsible, but it's also necessary for all of us to work together to be responsible for the natural environment and to be good stewards of this planet that we have.
You know, the other thing is that we as agriculturalists communicate very well amongst ourselves. But we rarely take the opportunity at a public forum or a civic activity to really express the good things that we do. And I think we as agriculturalists have to take that responsibility. We have to take the charge and make our neighbors aware and let them feel more comfortable what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're protecting the land for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, we often talk to farmers that, hey, we've got to manage ourselves, we've got to be very responsible, and then we need to get that message out that, yes, in the United States, we do indeed have the safest and most abundant food and water supplies in the world, and that's thanks to the American farmer, but we've got to continue with that going forward. Troy and Warren, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Thanks. Thank you.